Welcome to the AP Insight, how to incorporate AP Insight resources into your classroom, time organization, and classroom strategies. My name is Kelsey Burse, and I will be your presenter tonight. I welcome all of you on a Tuesday night after a long weekend. As we're working through here, feel free to ask questions through the chat box. I will be monitoring as we go, or just with a quick hand that you can raise up at the top for any questions you might have. This is, while it's a webinar and I'm going to be leading it, hopefully it's an open discussion with questions that you might have. If you feel comfortable with the mic, you can feel free to use that, but most of the time we'll just work through our chat box and do that. This presentation was developed by Audra Brown Ward, who's the Director of AP Instructional Design for Life Science. And we want to thank her for all of her hard work on this. Hopefully we are able to make your life a little easier in our classroom. AP Insight is one of the best things that I use in my classroom. I've been using it for now a good 5 years. Our agenda today is going to be precise in what we're doing. The first thing we're going to do is have a brief recap of what AP Insight is. And then we're going to discuss navigating the planning tools on AP Insights. We'll have some time management tips for AP Insight that I use in my classroom, along with other of the heavy users of AP Insight. We're going to have some question and open discussion session towards the end, and then some related resources and next step. At the end of this workshop, we will have a survey for you to fill out real quick if you don't mind. With that being said, we're going to have a brief recap of what AP Insight is. The AP Insights came out of the new AP Biology curriculum that came out, I think it's like about 6-7 years ago now. And it provides a focused support on things that we refer to as challenge areas, that they are foundational for college level achievement, yet they're hard to teach and hard to learn. This was done through research as well as data collection. It uses formative assessments to identify students' misunderstandings during the instructional cycle so that target resources can be provided to help close those gaps before the end of course assessments, which again is the AP exam. The formative assessments mirror the content and structure of the AP exams, but are not the same degree as the actual AP exam items, because they're intended to target a specific misunderstanding and provide feedback to guide next steps. The thing about AP Insight is it's not your entire curriculum. It's a flexible resource for you to use that in your course. Hopefully by the end of this webinar, you're able to take some of these different ideas that we have and start incorporating more ideas into your classroom and uses of the different tools that are available through AP Insight. With AP Insight, you'll see along the top there, when you jump in there, there's a prepare section, a teach section, assess, and then act. We're going to kind of be focusing on the idea of how to prepare and how to use the teach and access in your course. And it is important with AP Insight, one of the most important things is to allow your students time to reflect. One of the key components of AP Insight is that you allow your students to reflect on not just the student activities which we'll refer to as performance tasks, but also the formative assessments and quizzes and challenge area assessments and whatnot. So for navigating to the planning tools on AP Insight, there's a lot of stuff on AP Insight, so we just want to take a moment to show you where to go to access some of these resources we'll be talking about in this presentation. The first thing is the topic translation document is a helpful guide that outlines where AP Biology topics are addressed. Here's the first page of the sample, and what you'll notice that it involves the challenge area 1.2, evaluating Hardy-Weinberg data. And here's a zoomed in view of the topics addressed, excuse me, and the and how these topics align with each building block in that particular challenge area. This document is one of the first things that caught my eye about AP Insight. I'm a standalone in my district, so I'm the only one that uses AP Insight, and I had to figure this out on my own for the most part. And this tool was invaluable in terms of being able to determine where to put certain activities and certain quizzes in my course. So this is a great tool. Now, to get to the topic translation, you need to go to the strategy section of AP Insight. So I'll give you a second to navigate to the strategy section, which you'll notice is on the top bar. And then scroll down and click on the topic translation. Oops, excuse me. The topic translation, which will be underneath identifying the challenge areas. Once you do that, can you each of you give me a hand up to signify that you've done that? Perfect. There's both completed samples there as well as blank templates that you're able to work off as well. Excellent, excellent, Bobby. Perfect. Cynthia and Kelly and Richard, are you able to find that stuff? We'll give you guys a second to do that. Okay, Cynthia, yes. Perfect. Richard, not yet. Okay, we'll give you a second. And Kelly, were you able to find it? Yes, perfect, Kelly. We'll give Richard just a second more. As Richard's finding his way on there, we want to make sure he's able to find that. It is a good resource. You'll find that it's about 12 pages long. You have already downloaded it. It is a document that I have downloaded. It's actually in my lesson plan book, and I refer to it quite a bit in building my lesson plans to understand AP Insight. Every time I look at it, I learn something new. Oh, perfect, Richard. All right, so we're all good to go. All right, so we'll just check everybody off there and then jump and move to the next slide. So the next thing that we have is the unit planning calendar, and it's one of the most helpful instructional tools. So along with the topic planning, this unit planning calendar, when I saw the example when I first got into AP Insight, it is actually what started to make sense of AP Insight. And the calendar outlines what you're doing with your class on any given upcoming unit. And a lot of you already have these done in your regular class, and it just gives you a good idea of how to implement AP Insight task. The unit plan provides a high-level overview of content being covered as well as learning activities. Yes, excellent, Bobby. Yes, I'm right there with you. I'm a little old school. I like to have hard copies of these, not just the computer. What we see here is a sample of a provided on AP Insight for the unit cells. And you see there's a lot of detail shown and a color key indicating which type of resource is being referred to. So by taking a look at this, you'll notice that like on this date of October 15th, the person's doing 2.5 BBA quiz. My students have become very, very familiar when they see 2.5, 3.24. These are all the challenge areas, and they know that's referencing AP Insight. And with also on here where it says 2.5 BBA in green, that is actually the performance task that the teacher's using on that date. Here, it looks like they're doing Bozeman Biology for review and then a challenge area feedback. On the 17th, Metabolism Unit. 18th, they're doing TED Talks. So you notice these things here, these are just their normal activities that they're doing in their course. This is not necessarily AP Insight on the 17th and 18th. And we click on the 19th, and you'll notice that they've implemented both 3.11b and 3.11d cell cycle regulation into their activities here. So you'll notice that within 4 days, they jumped into different AP Insight challenge areas and building blocks as they implement these tools within their curriculum, which is a really important thing. Some teachers just think, okay, I got to implement everything into my course. And in reality, what you can do is pick and choose when you want to use these different tasks as you move through the course. Now, how you access the unit planning calendar is you are going to go to strategies again, up at the top, just like you did the topic translation, and then scroll down to planning of units, and you'll see down on the bottom there that there is a sample unit planning calendar and a blank unit calendar. When I first started with AP Insight using it in my classroom, I actually used their blank unit planning calendar just to lay out how I was going to implement everything into my course. If you could take a minute to find that unit planning calendar and then give me a hand when you are ready, when you found it, or indicate in the chat box. All right, Gabby, excellent. Alias, excellent. Perfect, perfect. Excellent. I think everybody's getting to that point where they've got it. All right. One thing I do want to continue to emphasize is the fact that all the assessment tools and performance tasks that have to do with, and when I refer to performance tasks, I'm actually referring to the different activities for the building blocks, that these are all standalones that can be implemented in different parts of your course. These are just different tools that you can add to your toolbox as you're starting to become more and more familiar with AP Insight. The next thing I want to point out is the next step guide. And this next step guide is an ability for students to help reflect on their questions and why they got them wrong, and thus be able to reflect on their own learning. These next step guides are found in the AP Insight, and each one of these tools are very, very valuable in terms of your students reflecting. I use these on a regular basis with my students, just to the fact that they start to learn. A lot of my students struggle with actually test taking techniques, and we work on those things on a regular basis. So sometimes their reflections will point out how they didn't use a certain tool, or that they're missing a specific content with it. So for incorrect answers, they're able to, what did you know about the concept or science practice assessed by the question? Did you misread the question, which a lot of my students do? Did you need more time or practice with the content to give us some feedback, or be able to redirect them into being able to learn more about these challenging areas? Now, with the next step guides for building blocks, they do the same thing, where they're able to, where did my students have the most difficulty? And you're able to determine an action plan to close the learning gaps for our students. So these are tools that are really valuable to try to connect these difficult concepts that our students have throughout the course. Do any of you have any questions about the next step guides, topic translations, or unit planning guides, calendars that we've been through yet? Bobby's asking a question here, so we'll let her type away. Anybody else have any other questions as Bobby's typing? We'll give her a second. All right, so the steps are found if you jump into AP Insight. If everybody will jump into AP Insight real quick, you will find that the next step guides, if you they found under Assess. All right, so if you click the Assess button and you click on a specific challenge area, you'll notice that if you actually, sorry, not the Assess, I spoke wrong. Actually, it's under the Act button, and you'll find the building block next step guides under the Acts button. And at the top of AP Insights, you will also find you'll be able to change the next step guides based on the challenge areas at the top. How successful am I getting the kids to do the next step reflection analysis? I start using AP Insight on a regular basis at the beginning of the year, and these next step guides actually become a part of the course. At the beginning, I do not grade their quizzes when they're taking them for AP Insight. What I grade is their actual reflection on the next step guides and their analysis. So as long as they're truthful on their analysis and their reflection, they are able to find, they're able to receive full credit for taking the quiz. It is not until later in the year that I start grading their quizzes when they take it for a second time. Was everybody able to find the next step guides under ACT? Yes, perfect. Okay. And then actually, I use interactive notebooks in my classroom. And with my interactive notebooks, I don't actually even print off all these building blocks next step guides. They know how to construct them in the in their interactive notebooks. So they receive one, the first time we do it, they get a sample of it. And once they receive that sample, they then learn how to do it. And like I was saying, that reflection for me is more important than the answers at that time, so that they start to learn why they're missing it and what they're, and how they can come across of doing more to improve their learning. All right, so I'm going to jump out of the next step, and we're going to jump into time management for AP Insight. So with time management, a common teacher struggle is there's never enough time to do everything you want to do. And I think we're all guilty of that. So we often get questions about how to fit in AP Insight materials into an already packed course. So we wanted to start off by sharing some reminders and tips that might help you incorporate more of these resources without necessarily adding more time or more activities or more homework to your students. First, remember that AP Insights are designed to be flexible. They're part of your toolbox. They are not your curriculum. You can use or not use whichever ones you need to in order that works best for you. As I've become more and more comfortable with AP Insight, there's certain performance tasks that they're usually broke up into tasks 1, 2, 3. I might just do task 3 of a specific activity that I want to get to, or sometimes I have something that I like to do instead of the AP Insight activity, and then I'll assess it using AP Insight. One way that many teachers incorporate AP Insight is replacing one of their existing activities with those performance tasks. The great thing about the performance tasks are they are student-centered and tied to a specific set of topics in a building block. If you recall, the building blocks are the key concepts that students need to grasp and understand in order to understand the challenge area. They allow you to see the level of student understanding without having to design your own activity. So especially as a new AP biology teacher, having access to activities that are tested by experienced AP biology teachers is an invaluable resource that you can use in your classroom. And and because they address the content you're already teaching, these resources can be used in lieu of other activities. For example, if you've been using another activity in the past, but you've been wondering about swapping it out or revising it, this is a perfect opportunity to try a performance task instead. One strategy I do want to let you guys know is make sure that if you go to use a performance task, there's always two versions of that performance task. There's a student version and a teacher version. I highly recommend that make sure that you look at the teacher version, because within the teacher version, there are usually some things that you might have to print or have available in order to accomplish that performance task. That might not be included in the performance task student edition that you would print up. Does everybody understand where to find performance task at? If you understand that, please raise your hand. Okay, Bobby knows how to find the performance task alias. Perfect. Okay, Gabriel. Okay, got it. Cynthia. Perfect. Richard, how about you? No. Okay, Richard. So let's all take a second to do this. If you would, click on Teach. And if you click on Teach and scroll down a little bit, you'll notice that developing building blocks understanding. Are you able to get there? And then it says select a building block, and under that building block, you're able to select which building block you want to under the challenge area that's located on the top. And then under developing building block understanding, you'll find the performance task. Teacher edition is labeled with the TS for student edition. Were you able to find that, Richard? Oh, perfect. Okay. So yeah, it's just a great little technique to use is to check that. I've been caught a couple times. I'll look at the student edition. I won't even look at the answer key and realize that there was something I might have needed to print up, a manipulative of some sort, a model, whatever. So that is a good resource. You can also make use of the building block quizzes that are online. When I first started using AP Insight, and it looks like some of you are in the same boat, these were the first things that I used, and I found them to be great resources for my students. I teach sophomores, and a lot of them, this is a first experience with AP Science questions. And being able to be exposed with questions that are a little higher order thinking was invaluable. The technique of not grading them early and then grading them in the second part of the year came from a colleague of mine. As they get closer to the AP exam, I start grading them a little bit more. But what I want my students to do is to do that reflection piece. And with the building block quizzes, over the years, AP Insight continues to improve. They do listen to everything that we give in terms of advice. And one thing that they've really improved on is their use of the building block quizzes on phones, computers, iPads. I have computers in my room, and my students, even to this day, will use their phones instead of their computers in order to access these building block quizzes online. You can choose to give your students immediate results, or you can hold those results back. I always want my students to take a look of why they missed their answers and be able to direct them into different ideas. And the great thing for me is they provide immediate feedback. The next step guides, like I was saying, is a lot of times, like tomorrow, I'm using a building block quiz. We did cell cycle regulation today, and they will actually be doing a quiz as a bell ringer, followed by the next step guide then. Another thing you can do is assign next step guides as homework to help students reflect on their misunderstanding. The earlier you teach your students to reflect, the better they get at it as they learn how to know what they don't know and why they're missing certain questions. And this can help win back time down the road when you assign reflective stuff as homework. At the beginning of the year, I do not time the quizzes, But after in another month or so, I will start timing them to try to get them more used to taking the quizzes on a time period. So with the building block quizzes, one thing where you find them is that you click on the assessment tab and you're able to choose what you're looking for. It will take you to a new page, which is shown below, and you can search certain filters, and it can easily preview what type of quiz you're going to give. Another shortcut that you have on AP Insights, which is if you, on the home page, there is a button along the top that says Quick Links. And if you click on Quick Links, there's a button that says View Assign Assessments, Create, View Your Classes, Enter Your Student Scores, View This Year's Results. View and Assign Assessments, that's how I quickly get in to it. Or you can go along with the assessments like I just showed you. Any questions about the assessments in terms of the building block quizzes? All right, no questions, perfect. Okay, so this leads us to any questions that you might have. If you have any questions, please type them into the chat box, and we'll be able to answer questions. All right, Elias, go right ahead. Okay, you're able to access the assessment tab. Okay, perfect. Big ideas, okay. All right. Oh, that's interesting. To be honest with you, I always go through the quick links section from the homepage. But here, let me jump in here real quick and see why it's doing that. Big idea, choose. Okay. And okay, and then you said that I hit choose. I see the option, pick choose. You got to select a big idea and filter. Actually, where you want to go is you actually want to go to the challenge area. So you see the third button down where it says Science Practices Challenge Area. If I click on Big Idea 1, that should upload the quizzes for Big Idea 1. Give it a second. Elias, do you see how you can get to the quizzes from the homepage as well? Yes, I can share that with you as well. Okay, so in AP Insight, hit the little home button at the top, the little house, and you'll notice it takes you back to the okay. So then it says Welcome AP Insight, AP Insight Office Hours. Sign up for training or Quick Links. Click on Quick Links. Okay, you got that, Elias? And then once you click links, click View and Assign Assessments. Yes, the quick links. Yes, and then view, and then this brings up the entire list of all AP Insight quizzes, and this is how I choose my quizzes to assign. Were you able to get there? Oh, it's not on your homepage? Really? You're not able to see that when you click the little home button. It says Quick Links. Okay. Oh, that's a good question, Kelly asks. Are you in Google Chrome? It might be blocking that for some reason, but we can take a look at it. Okay, yeah, I'm always in Chrome when I'm using it, so that's a good. Okay. All right, Alias, to see, and we can work on. I stay on afterwards to see it. Were you able to see it then, Alias? Oh, it's working on Chrome. Perfect. No worries. That's how I get into all the quizzes and assign them. For me, it's the quickest way, quickest buttons. I find the quiz, assign them, and off I go. So for our discussion here, I'm going to have some guided questions that we're going to kind of work for. For those of you who have used the AP Insight resources, what other time management tips would you recommend? I know a couple of you used AP Insight, but it looks like a lot of you are pretty new to AP Insight. I know Bobby's our veteran here. Let's see what ideas that she has. I've been trying to throw out ideas as we go through here. Another question as we're answering that, if you have students at different levels, how can you use AP Insight resources to differentiate for their needs in unit planning? If your majority of your class needs support with one specific misunderstanding, plan to use the student resource for that misunderstanding under the recommended next steps with your whole class. You can also use an ACT resource for the most common misunderstanding with your whole class. That's a really good technique in the sense that you are able to use these different next steps, and you can implement them early. If your class is divided between two misunderstandings, plan to use the student resources or ACT resources for those misunderstandings with students in small groups, and then have them share out. You can, if your students are dispersed across multiple misunderstandings, plan to use the student resources for various misunderstandings. But if you notice, the key is always kind of reverting back to that next step guide. That analysis of their learning is so key to the AP Biology course. Bobby says here, it says, I set specific time limits for completion of task quizzes and stick to it. Otherwise, students will ask for extensions from the beginning of the year. This allows you to be able to use the results with everyone when you need it. That is a great point, because sometimes you can be all over the place and never really get to the next steps because students are always asking for more time. It's a great point, Bobby. Any other questions that or techniques that each of you might use in your courses? Bobby's typing away here, so we'll let her finish her typing. In the meantime, I'm going to jump to related resources and next steps. So the next series, this is the second in a series of 3 webinars that involve AP Insights. And how you can access previously recorded PLC webinars is from the AP Insight homepage. You go to Strategies. From Strategies, you're able to click on Connect via the web PLC webinar series, and that will bring you to the webinar series, and there you can access all available recordings. So like, for example, let's say you just happen to miss this webinar, you're able to go back and listen to a webinar and pick up those resources and stuff that you might have. One of the techniques Bobby threw out here was students also love the times when they get to do tasks together. They feed off each other's input. That's so very true. Sometimes, you know, the learning that students have by teaching others is really valuable technique, not just a teacher standing in front of the room and passing on information. For the webinar, tonight's PLC recording will be posted there as well. For those who are new to the site, take time to look around the website. It's rich beyond your imagination. That was from Bobby, and I second that motion. As you just dabble into the different parts of the program, you'll find that the resources are rich. Some of the activities I have found in the performance tasks were things that I was doing before, but they are packaged in a way that I found kind of lended itself to the new AP Biology course for all of us veterans who taught the old course. And now those are things I use in my course on a year-by-year basis. All right. So one of the things that is unique for AP Insight is a part that says share what works. And with this is actually a community that is specific for AP Insights. This is not a part of the discussion board for AP Biology. This is unique to AP Insight. So as you're dabbling around in different things, you can go into this page, this resource, and either continue the conversations from the PLC or collaborate with other AP Biology teachers, or just throw out a question like, does anybody have a sample roadmap? Or how have you used this activity before in your class? And it is monitored by a AP Insight teacher that's an expert, and they will be able to help you implement those different things into your class. As far as contact information for AP Insights, my suggestion is you might want to snap a picture of this to give you some more information. Oh, on share how it works, if you actually click on discussions at the top of the AP Insight page, it will take you directly to the discussion board. Like I said, which is separate from the AP Biology community. You can only access it while logged into AP Insight. So do any of you have any specific questions that you might want that you have for AP Insights? I'll give you an example. I'm right in the middle of doing cell cycle regulation, and so mitosis, meiosis. I also talk about non-disjunction, and kind of giving you an idea of how AP Insight works. I'm doing the activity for 3.11D on cell cycle regulation. I will quiz it on tomorrow, actually, as the students come back in. They'll do their next step guide. But the next thing I'm moving into is chromosome abnormalities, which actually is in 3.24B for AP Insight. It's one of the new things I'm doing this year. I made a note last year that it fit in better at this time of year, so I'm jumping from 3.11 to 3.24 within a few days, because that's what fits in what I'm speaking about. I know some people talk about non-disjunction in genetics. So the idea of using AP Insight in different parts of your course is so key to understanding the power of AP Insight and the activities you do. The activity for 3.24 is actually an article they read and a set of questions. And my students will actually be doing that as homework for the first time. I'm going to try it out to see if how they do it as homework. We'll come back, digest that article, and then I'll assess it on Friday to paint a picture of a different way that you can use AP Insight. Bobby just typed in something here, so we'll give her a second. Another technique, these are great activities as long as you kind of understand what they are for students when you might be out of the classroom. They are great activities because they're so well written and tested with the various students. Also, you don't have to assign all the questions in particular if you are teaching things from different challenge areas. Always, and that is so very true. You can do different things with the building blocks and the challenge areas to meet the needs in your courses. And I have found with AP Insight that it has in many ways changed my scope and sequence, and sometimes where I didn't really think that a couple things would go together, and I was like, oh, that kind of makes sense. So it does improve you as a teacher in terms of how you make connections in your AP Biology course, which we all know is key for our student success in terms of understanding the course and then performing on the AP exam. With that being said, you'll notice on the screen there's a survey for you to take. Now, the survey is in blue writing here, so it says take our survey at, and there is a link under there. You'll find it if you take your mouse and move over it. The hand will go over it. Please include your full name, school, and school district in the survey. This information will be used for CEU credits and attendance reporting. I will be staying around here for any specific questions you might have about implementing the different parts of AP Insight into the course. So feel free to do that. When you're done with the survey, I thank you for all of your willingness to stay with us throughout the hour here in terms of showing some different techniques with AP Insight. But if you don't have any questions after the survey, you are free to go. Again, I'll be waiting after for the next 15 minutes here if you do have any questions. Thank you very much for your time. Oh, Cynthia, you can't get into the survey? Let me see if I can get into it myself here, Cynthia. All right, Cynthia, give me a second here. I'm trying to copy here. Just hover the words and click. Cynthia, can you try that? Let me try something else here. Yes, Cynthia, I'm getting in here. Give me a second here. Just 1 second. I'm going to pull it up on the PDF and then copy and paste it into the chat box here. Actually, I have. Nope, I can't read it on that one. Let me see if I can find it another way, Cynthia. Nope. Oh, there we go. Oh, Bobby got it on there, Cynthia. Thank you so much, Bobby. I was trying to find it here. Cynthia, are you able to get in that way? Oh yeah, it might be a problem, Cynthia. I will. Do you have your? Can you type in your email address here, and I will send it to you real quick. Oh, perfect, Alias. Thank you so much for doing that. As you guys are finishing your survey, I am going to write my email up here. You can feel free to email me at any time if you have questions on how to more detailed questions on how to implement AP Insight tools, which ones I use on a regular basis, how I might implement it, like I was talking about with cell cycle regulation or transcription, translation, Hardy-Weinberg, whatever. You can feel free to email me at any time, and I will get back to you ASAP. With it, like I was saying, I find AP Insight to be the most valuable tool I use. And over the last 4 to 5 years, I have learned more and more on how to implement it definitely is a powerful tool to use in your class.